Welcome to the show. And today I'm excited to present my interview with Vesa Ponkka to you today. And Vesa is the president of the Junior Tennis Champion Center, home to Frances Tiafoe, Denis Kudla, and numerous other elite players. JTCC is located in College Park, Maryland, and I've played there a bunch. And as you all probably know, Maryland is my home state, so I really enjoyed speaking to a local here. And as JTCC's president, Vesa directs long-term strategic planning, project implementation, and identification of new partners for JTCC. He also manages and mentors staff members and ensures the quality of JTCC programming, which is top-notch. Vesa was selected as the 2011 USOC National Developmental Coach of the Year and has trained top junior players in the U.S. and Europe for national NCAA, ITF, and professional competition. And his students have predictably won numerous professional and national titles and achieved number one rankings and so forth. And Vesa is certified by the USPTA, PTR, and USTA High Performance. So on the show today, we talk about the holistic pathway of development, the importance of having a healthy perspective, positive versus negative pressure, and which types of pressures you can actually deal with, as well as some really cool insights on Frances Tiafoe and Denis Kudla and their time training at JTCC. I remember actually being able to interview both of them at the same time at the City Open after one of their doubles matches, which was definitely a highlight for me. And it was cool to talk about them again, and really cool to talk with Vesa, as I've mentioned a couple times on the show, that he really pushed me very hard when I took a lesson with him one time as a junior. I'll never forget that one. So I knew that right away at that time that he was a very high level coach for sure. So, and he's proven it throughout the years. So with that, I am going to push us to the interview with Vesa, which I'm sure you're all waiting to listen to. So with that, here's my interview with Coach Vesa Ponkka. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Tennis Files podcast. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to have on Vesa Ponkka on the podcast. He's a fantastic coach, and he is, top-notch, teaching a lot of the greatest players, in the country at the Junior Tennis Champion Center in College Park, Maryland, which is a great facility that I've played at many, many times. And Vesa, it's really great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. And I believe this is my second time, and the first time was great. So I'm looking forward to this this time.
Thank you so much, Vesa. I really appreciate that. So my first question for you is just really curious about your history and getting into JTCC itself. So at what point in your career did you end up at JTCC, and then how did that come about?
Yeah, it's a great story. I did the normal thing. I grew up in Finland. I did all the sports, but I just absolutely loved tennis, and I had a good junior career in Finland, then tried to play pro, never made a big money. So, when I was 22, 23 years old, I decided that, hey, I have to get an education, went to the University of Tennessee at Martin, got my undergraduate and MBA from there, and played college tennis. And then after that, moved to Washington, D.C. and kind of created a student athlete, actually one of the first ones in late 80s and early 90s that, student athlete scholarship service for European athletes. So we were responsible for about 750 European student athletes coming to the scholarships here to USA in all sports. And I was doing a lot of coaching on the side, and that started to take more and more of my time, and I started to notice that I'm actually pretty decent doing it, and so did a lot of junior coaching and had some success there and here. And then Mr. Brody, who is the founder of JTCC, just called me out of the blue and told him about his plans for JTCC. That was 1999, 22 years ago. And such was his strong personality, and that I was totally sold after 3 minutes of his presentation. And I left a great job at Congressional Country Club And the funny thing is that, like I said, it was the first time of me meeting Mr. Brody, and there was nothing other than the plans. There was nothing more than that. And my wife was 9 months pregnant with my second daughter. My first, newborn was 4 years old. So I left a great job for this plan up in the air, and took a nice pay cut, and he just had a great vision, and I bought into it, and the last 22 years have been great, and that was one of the best decisions that I have ever done. But I still do remember driving home from that meeting and sweating and thinking what I'm going to tell my wife, that I just promised to go with a guy that I don't know anything about it. There's no tennis and there's nothing else and other plans. And like I said, she was 9 months pregnant. So, but it turned out to be the best decision that I have ever done. And, we have had a great 22 years so far.
Yeah, that's amazing, Vesa. It's really cool to hear you go with your gut, and then obviously being very right, and helping forge one of the best training facilities in the country, if not the world. So I have a couple follow-ups. I guess the first one might help players like make decisions, especially those who are playing futures and so forth. I was wondering what your thought process was. I know you mentioned a little bit about the financial aspect of when you were on the pro tour, and I believe you got to like the 600s or 700s, which is still great. But you made the decision that I'm just gonna go and coach. Like, what advice do you have for other people who are in this similar type of predicament? Like, what thought process to go through to decide whether to keep going for a long time and having the toil, or just stopping and trying something else?
That's a really good question, and thousands of young players go through it on daily basis, and so I have been through it. And my first advice is that you go after your dreams, you try your best, and you go after it. No regrets. You just do whatever it takes to make it happen. But then, it's such a funny thing. The marketplace will give you an answer sooner or later, and you have to respect that one. And so that's we all know how expensive it is to play this sport. I played Bundesliga in Germany, and that helped me a lot financially, but still it's super expensive. And if you are not breaking to the higher level, it's just economically it's not possible to go on forever. My family was great, but unfortunately they could never really support my tennis financially, so I relied on federation, and then federation helped me out for a while, but it doesn't last forever. And then like I said, my family couldn't really support me. So my point is that you have to listen to the marketplace. It's very rarely wrong, and after 3-4 years, if you are not good enough, then simply you are not good enough, and you have to then adjust your plans. And I was always interested in coaching. I always thought that playing tennis is the best thing in the world, but now I'm reversing my thinking. I think that the coaching and teaching is the best thing in the world to do, and then playing is of course great too. But I always knew that I want to get into teaching and coaching anyway. So it was fairly easy transition for me personally.
Gotcha, Vesa. Thanks for that advice. And I was also curious, as another follow-up, for what convinced you to go to JTCC? Because obviously, clearly, a lot of powerful messages that were being given to you to convince you to go. Especially to leave for a pay cut. I mean, that's tough. So, any insight on what was said there?
I mean, look, I have always been a kind of a risk taker. I left Finland when I was 18, moved to Germany, and tried to make it there, playing professional tennis, and then came to this country with the 2 tennis bags, to start college, and so I have never been afraid of kind of taking chances, and I have to thank my family to bringing me up that way. And just when Mr. Brody approached me, it was just something that my gut was telling me that this is something really unique. And honestly, I wasn't enjoying so much the country club setting. My mind was always in the competitive part of the game, and I just followed my gut in a sense, and I encourage everybody to, take some chances. Nothing bad will happen, just take some chances.
Yeah, for sure. There's always ways to recover if, worst case scenario happens. So I'm familiar with a lot of different players from JTCC. I played like same tournaments as like Philip Simmons and Treat Huey and Billy Mertz and all those players. But I was curious, like, who were some of the first really high level players that you worked with when you began at JTCC or a little bit afterwards?
No, I mean, those names you just mentioned, those were our first generation players, Philip Simmons and Treat Huey. And we also had a Vera Svoroneva here, like our first foreign player. And Vera was very successful junior and then in the pros. And it kind of just, then the next generation came out, there are some great players, Denis Kudla and Francis and Eleanor Peters and Pinsky brothers, and there just have been a lot of good players. And then Mitchell Frank, grew up with Dennis and Junior Orr and Tracy Capra. So we have been really lucky to have a good, driven young people here to work with, and hopefully we have been able to help them out. And
100%.
I'm old enough that I'm old enough and I'm lucky enough that I have seen actually 4 or 5 different player generations to go through, which is really exciting and great. I consider one player generation to be about 5-6 years, and it's great to see how they grow up and they are developing not only as a tennis players but as a human beings. And that's actually, when I'm getting a little bit older and getting a little bit more mature, I'm actually putting much more value on that one than just winning Kalamazoo's and Orange Balls.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, Vesa. Y'all doing a great job there. So I'm curious, with each successive generation, are there any particular approaches that maybe you either refined or changed over time because you figured out like, oh, maybe this isn't working as well, or we could change it to do, to this type of approach? Anything like that?
Yes, actually, that's a huge part of coaching anyway and teaching. You need to be able to read the situations, and we always have to remember everybody's an individual, and you have to find the ways to best, the right patterns and find the way not only to teach and coach, but to motivate and then hopefully in the end to inspire. And over the last 22 years at JTCC, I mean that I have personally done every mistake under the skies. I mean that there's no question about it, but I like to think that I have been smart enough to learn from it, so I don't make those mistakes too often anymore. But the biggest thing is that, early days we were thinking that we create a system or model, but actually I have really learned that, you have to respect the individual player and their needs, and you have to have a solid fundamentals how you coach, but then after that when you got to just learn to look at them as an individual. So that is the balancing act that is difficult, and so many times we fall in love with our own systems and models, but you have to look at the players as individuals. They have their own needs. As long as the fundamentals are taught well, the good things will happen.
Yeah, 100%, Vesa. I've heard that approach is so integral to success for each student, and everyone's different. But how do you actually do that? Because you have hundreds or thousands or whatever amount of students that you have to cater to. So like, what's the secret to being able to individually cater to each player's needs?
2 things. When we started it, one of our first decisions, and maybe the most important decision that we got it right, was that we figured out 22 years ago that every successful player, they have a driving force behind them. And we tried to create that kind of system. So we started from day one, we started our mentoring. And over years, we have really, adjusted it. But the mentoring is extremely important. So how we do it is that the coach have, depending on the experience level, but, they have somewhere between 2 to 8 to 9 to 10 players that they are mentoring. What that really means is that that coach is responsible that all the technical, tactical, physical, mental, emotional planning work gets done. It doesn't mean that that coach does it all by himself or herself. It means that that mentor is responsible that those things gets done. That coach and mentor is responsible that the player is learning and improving, but also that coach is responsible that that the team will be there supporting, and all coaches work as a team. So it is a balancing act. And when they are younger, then we do a little bit more group mentoring, but we try to be clear with the message and making sure that the kids need to improve and they need to get better, and coaches have to feel the pressure to teach, and they have to understand that the players have to improve. I mean, that all the time and money that has been invested, we all know how extremely expensive this sport is here in USA. Look, the fact is the players have to improve. They have to learn, and that is a responsibility of the teacher, coach, or the mentor. Like you said, it cannot be done by one person. So that's why the teamwork is really important, that in our culture here, that the coaches are using our coaching team to address the needs of those individual players. And it's not easy. It will take a long time to learn to do it. But that's how we try to approach it. But getting to the point that players feel like there is a driving force, and hopefully extremely positive one, that they can rely on when it comes to the on-court and off-the-court development.
Thanks, Vesa. And what are some of these, or some examples of these driving forces that your players tend to have? I'm curious if maybe, some of our audience can, kind of realize some of these, one of these or more that they might have, and then that will help them, play better.
When I say the driving force, I meant kind of the support and the people around them.
Oh, I see.
That's what I meant, that, that everybody needs help. And of course,
Gotcha.
The parents are the number one source of that one, but then the great teachers and the coaches can really be in a position to have a huge influence on the kids. So that's when I talked about the driving force behind the player or behind an athlete.
Gotcha, Vesa. Appreciate that. And then, with your top players, I'm curious, what a typical day like of training. So, Tread or Denis or Frances, what do they usually, what does a typical day of training look like, from the tennis court to the gym to, mental game exercises? What does that look like usually?
Again, it depends, but basically it's a lot of work. So let's take an example, somebody like Denis, who was very driven, was very willing to do all the work that was asked. So, he was very independent. So let's say that he started with us when he was 12 years old as a full-time student, meaning that he practiced twice a day. He came here when he was 8 years old, and then he practiced once a day. But I give you an example of the full day load for him. He took a metro from home, from Virginia to here. His parents wanted him to be independent, so they didn't drive him here. So he took a metro when he was 12 years old. He fixed his own lunch. So he got here to our school about 7:45, did school for 2 hours. Then we have our first training session at 10 o'clock. Go about 90 minutes or 2 hours, then again back to the school for another 2 hours, have a lunch there, and then back on the court again around 2 o'clock, hopefully play points and matches, and couple of hours match play, and then do the fitness. So his day was over around 5 o'clock. And then he jumped back on the metro and got home. So it is extremely demanding schedule. It's really long day. And then he gets home, and then he has to still do the homework and everything. So it takes a lot of dedication, and you have to be extremely driven to go through the schedule. And then weekends, a lot of tournaments. So the commitment level is it's needed to be really high, and that's how the rest of the world is working. I mean, we have to understand that the rest of the world is working super hard, and we all know that this is a game of repetitions. You have to see the ball a lot, so you have to spend a lot of time on the tennis court, and hopefully you are working hard, but more importantly, you are working the very smart way. But it is a huge commitment to try to be a professional tennis player, and or even to become a great college player. So a lot of hard work. I want to make a point that this absolutely can also be done, in the early years by going to the normal school. There's no question about it. We have had plenty of great players that finished their high school or normal school and still did extremely well. So it can be done both ways. But even after school, you have to be prepared to train 3 to 4 hours, because that's what your competition is doing in Europe and South America. So those are the loads that you have to be able to put in when you are junior.
Thanks for that insight, Vesa. And yeah, you reminded me, of Denis, because I interviewed him on the podcast at episode 100 something, and I just was really blown away by his level of commitment and the metro rides in particular. So, and again, I have a sense of what this answer might be, but I'm curious, on average, how much time do you spend on the mental game with your players, comparing that to, the physical and the on-court and all that stuff? If there's any sort of, average number, or does that just vary depending on the player?
Of course, the easy answer is that it depends, but let me try to be a little bit more specific. I feel, and our team feels strongly that, all these parts of training that hopefully will create this comprehensive training regime is that they are interacting well together. So I'm not a big fan of, well, let's say that you go to the dark room and you are listening to the whale music and I'm going to be good. No, I don't believe in that one. I believe that this mental work is done on the court a lot, and it's basically, we are talking about mental discipline and focusing skills that needs to be learned, and concentration skills. So we try to do as much as we can on the court, creating situations that will stimulate players to be in the tough positions. We believe that we try to take the kids out of their comfort zone and then help them way back into it. And of course, there has to be an individual approach, and that's when the mental coaching and the mental expert will jump in, and they can spend some one-on-one time. And when there are some deeper issues, which we all have. So to answer your question, it should be everyday topic that is discussed, and it's an everyday process that you have to pay attention to it. Not that you have a mental class, from 3 to 4 once a week or whatever. That's one way to do it, but I believe that you get the best results when it's a part of daily workload, and it's a part of the process.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vesa. And I guess that kind of leads into what we talked about a little bit, on our pre-call before we, started chatting on this podcast. Well, you mentioned the holistic pathway of development. So I wonder if you could talk more about that and why that's so important for the success of your players.
No, that's my favorite topic at the moment. I know that holistic approach is kind of the in word at the moment, but I would like to give a little bit background. When we started it, and we were all about high performance. We were all about winning, and we did a lot of winning, and we did well. But as a player, you win a big tournament, and we all know how it feels the next day. It's behind you, it feels good, but there has to be something more than that. And I'm glad to say that I'm 57 years old now, and I'm starting to mature a little bit. So I'm starting to see the big picture that actually we are really lucky, because I fully believe that tennis is the best sport in the world to teach really important life lessons. and I'm not saying it only because I'm a tennis player and it's my sport. I really think that the characteristics of the sport are absolutely fantastic to teach the life lessons to the kids, and that's what we try to do, in a sense that we are focusing on the whole kid, the whole player, not only as a tennis player but as a human being. Because again, the younger players, younger kids, everybody has their own timetable. You don't try to everybody to get to the next level at the same time. They have their own timetable, and you have to respect that one. So it's really important that we look at it, that what is the best for the kid as a person and not only as a tennis player. And I'm totally convinced, and I'm lucky because I have data from the last 22 years here at JTCC, that when we can achieve to get a player a really healthy perspective, not only about the sports but about life, I'm convinced that those players actually handle the pressure much better. And as a result, they will do more winning. Their pressure tolerance is much better. Their pressure management skills are much better when they have a healthy perspective about the life, and they the hitting the tennis ball is not the only thing they do. They are normally very good academically. It goes hand in hand. So I feel that the more time we spend making them really well-rounded young student athletes is actually going to improve their tennis skills, and more importantly, that pressure tolerance will go through the roof, and as a result, they will win a lot. And it's a nice positive cycle that just keeps on going on. So that's kind of what we are trying to do. It's a lot of work. But it's fun because you know that you are doing something really important other than just making them to hit some great forehands or backhands. So there's an old cliche, when people ask coaches, how the kids are doing, and you answer that, hey, ask me in 20 years. But it's really true. And I am really big on so-called teacher's mentality with our coaches. I do not want to hire anybody who doesn't have a teacher's mentality. That means that you think like a teacher, and you teach like a teacher, and it's a very unique mentality and mindset, which is difficult to live with on daily basis, but that is really important to us.
Brilliant stuff, Vesa. So yeah, a couple follow-ups on that. First off, I'm curious how or what signs are there for you to determine whether like a prospective coach actually has the the skills that you're looking for to be able to teach the students how you would like.
That's a really great question, and I hope that I'm getting better with that one. I think that we will never master it, but it's interesting. You can look at it in a way that when we are players, we are taught to be selfish, but as a teacher you have to be unselfish. When you are a player, you are taught to be kind of arrogant. When you are a teacher, you have to be humble. When you are an athlete or player, you are taught to be coached to be kind of, you are a taker, and when you are a teacher, you have to be a giver. And when you really start to think about that one, that is a 180-degree mental shift that has to happen. And that's why it's sometimes very difficult for great players to become really good teachers, because that shift is very difficult to do. Talking about, making it from being a taker, and then suddenly you have to be a giver. And it sounds simple, but it's difficult. So I always look at that, if the coach has potential to give back, and if they have a give back mentality, and are they thinking what is the best for the kid, and instead of best for the ego or for themselves or anything like that. So I don't have a scientific model. I trust my gut feeling a lot. I try to talk to the coach and the teacher a lot, and just get a feeling that if they have a ability to give back. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but I believe that ability to learn to give back and see the value on it, that's a must if and when you want to be a great teacher.
Yeah, very invaluable there. Thanks, Vesa. And then about the healthy perspectives, I'm wondering if you could give us insight as well on, how you go about, teaching this to your students, or maybe like what are the most important elements of having a healthy perspective.
No, that's we have done a lot of work on that one, and we do certain things, and I like to think that they are working great, and I it's my recommendation, and a lot of coaches and tennis centers would at least consider it. My point is that it's important for young tennis players to see different kind of tennis players, different kind of situations that players are facing. I give an example. We do a lot of work with the Special Olympic athletes. We do a lot of work with Paralympic athletes, wheelchair athletes, veterans, and the purpose of that one is that young tennis players learn to see that, hey, there are all kind of tennis players around. We all have different challenges, and when it's hopefully daily and weekly happening, that you can, it changes your perspective, it changes your way of thinking, and it hopefully becomes part of you. And that has been a really big part what we have done in us. And I believe that you create that give back mentality, but more importantly, you start to understand that, hey, there are all kind of players around, all kind of situations, and you really start to to understand that it's not the most important thing to smack the forehand as hard as you can. You need to learn how to behave, and you need to learn how to show respect not only to the game but your opponent, and it has so many positives involved when you get that perspective moving to the right direction. So just in practical terms, we try to make sure that our players are spending a lot of time with all kind of different tennis players. And I think that over the time, it's really going to show that we can actually have an impact on the perspective of the young student athletes.
Yeah, that's really brilliant, Vesa, because there's some times where maybe I'm having a tough day on the court, and then I remind myself to be grateful that I'm even able to play. Where a lot of people are not able to play, a lot of countries, there's no courts and things like that. So it seems like when your players are exposed to, Special Olympics players and Paralympics players and so forth, they have that gratitude that, they're maybe more capable of doing, certain things, or at least, athletically. So I think that's really a brilliant thing. And so then how does that contribute to the type of, as we talked about again before this podcast, like positive versus negative pressure? How does that all pan out there?
No, that's a great question. So, I'm a simple guy, and I look at things in a simple way. I feel there's internal pressure and there's external pressure. Unfortunately, we cannot do too much about external pressure, but we can do a lot of things about internal pressure, and that's when you learn to see that there are different situations, and that's when your perspective gets broader and better, and you start to understand life and different situations better. I strongly believe that this internal pressure decreases, or it becomes kind of the positive. It becomes that driving force or motivational pressure, which is always helpful. And unfortunately, if that perspective is not right, then our players are dealing with really negative internal pressure, and they are dealing with then additional negative external pressure, and that's it's very difficult to be successful in that kind of cycle, and unfortunately it's happening all the time. So if we can lessen the internal pressure and turn it into something positive, I strongly believe that the stress management skills and the pressure tolerance skills will just skyrocket, and not only results on the tennis courts will get better, but it's that life lessons that you can handle almost everything. And so how that's how I look at it, that there are things that you can control and then things that you cannot. And external pressure is tough. It's always going to be there. But you have to have a strong perspective to be able to handle it. And that means that your internal pressure hopefully turns to be something positive.
Gotcha, Vesa. And can you just give us an example, just for clarity's sake, of like a positive internal pressure versus a negative internal pressure?
Sure. It's just like you actually mentioned it. It's an old cliche, but we always think as an athlete that, we have the hardest and we are unlucky and this is not fair. And it's just, that's very normal. But if you have lived through the experiences and seen other people to struggle with different kind of challenges and overcoming it, it gives you that confidence and knowledge. You know what? My situation is fine, and it's not as bad as I think. And that gives you energy and confidence to move forward and tackle these external pressures. So that's what I mean, that there are always, as we all know, there's always better players than we are somewhere, but there's also always people who have it much harder than we do. And that can hopefully put things into the perspective.
Yeah, for sure, Vesa. And in addition to having your players, congregate with Special Olympics and Paralympics and so forth, players, are there any other techniques or things that you do to further, alleviate the internal pressures?
You mentioned those groups, but we also, just a normal, we do a lot of outreach, community outreach. Our players, you cannot train here if you don't give back. So you have to go out to the community and you have to give back. And so we are kind of systematically working on that one. And so all these things combined, I feel like they can have an positive impact on the amount of internal pressure and then how you deal with that one. So we all know that this game is it's really rough. It's really tough mentality wise, because there's so much losing happening. There are so many disappointments that happens in every match, and you just have to hopefully have a perspective to deal with that stuff and keep on going forward.
Definitely, Vesa. And is there a case study you can mention for us, particular player that, maybe had a lot more negative internal pressure that you all worked on, and then, it helped their game a lot more as a result of that?
Yeah, I mean that in different degrees. It's funny thing. It's with every player. It's with every player. But the funny thing is that if we just want to use the names that we kind of all the people know, Franceses and Denises and Robins, they all have learned to see through the life experiences that, hey, it's a privilege to play this game. And by accident or by hopefully systematic efforts, they learn to put things into the perspective. We all see how Francis is, on the court. He simply loves the game, and he knows that it's a privilege to play the game. And I'm so happy for him now that it's really starting to show, and he's now connecting with the crowds and everything. But he has always been the kid who just simply loved the game, and that put things into the perspective. Other one is that again, is we have a couple of guys like Mitchell Frank and Denis Kudla. One went to the pro route and one went to the college route. They both became extremely successful, and when they were teenagers, they help each other in a sense to understand the perspective and understand that what you do on the court is important, but it is not the most important thing in the world. And I'm so proud of these guys because they are fantastic human beings at the moment. And I like to think that the tennis has a lot to do with that one. It really teaches you to be humble and understand that there's a much bigger picture out there. Then somebody like Robin Montgomery is a great example. She actually started with our outreach program when she was 5-6 years old. And then from there, she was identified to come and train. And I'm so proud of her in a sense that when she was 11 and 12, she was systematically giving back. She was on those sites back and teaching some other underprivileged kids and teaching and motivating and she keeps on doing that one. So there's an other example of somebody who just has a healthy perspective nowadays how to compete and knows that there are bigger pictures than just hitting the tennis ball. And like I said, these are just examples of names that everybody knows. I'm really proud of the fact that there are tons of players who are playing college now, but they have these skills now, and I know for the fact that they are going to be successful whatever they do in their lives. So I just highlighted those few because it just you can see it on every day or every week on Tennis Channel, but I can tell that these players, one of the reasons they are successful is because they really have a perspective what they are doing and how they are doing things, and it's really paying off at the moment.
Love that. Love hearing that, and big respect to your programs and requiring community outreach. I think that's it's amazing. Obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of people love to hear about the top players. So I am curious about Frances, of course. During his time at JTCC, and it's interesting that actually my former teammate had coached him for a while there. But what were some of the biggest things that you all worked on with Frances, like that you think really made a huge impact on his game moving forward?
I would love us to take all the credit in the world that we created Frances, this and that, but unfortunately, I cannot do that. It's one thing that we did do is we created an environment that he could really, develop and create this love of the game. I think that is one of the biggest things that, Frances is one of the players who loves the game more than anybody else. The tennis was his best friend, and he took a great care of his best friend. He spent so much time against hitting the ball, and we try to encourage that one. It's not only, I always remember, and I have talked to, one coach who was really helping him a lot was Frank Salazar in a later part of Frances's junior career. And we always remember when Frank was working with Denis and Mitchell, and, when those guys were like 14 years old, Frances was like 9 years old, and he was just sitting on the tennis court, his feet didn't even touch the ground, and he was just observing and learning and just, paying so much attention. And then after that, he would go and hit against the wall. And so that is kind of the environment that, I don't want to take a credit that we designed it that way. It happened to happen that way, and we kind of acknowledge that one. So now we try to create the environment that kids have a chance to learn from other good players, and they get that self-belief that it can be done. And then we encourage them to go and practice and train and hit against the wall and learn to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So kind of that freedom of making mistakes. And that was Frances. He's a great big moment player at the moment, a big point player. When he was a junior, he was absolutely one of the best in the world to play the big points, because first he had a good perspective, but again, he just loved the game more than just winning or losing, and that kind of has helped him a lot.
Thanks for that, Vesa. And speaking of big points, I mean, that's obviously like a huge question. A lot of players are asking, how can I play clutch in the biggest moments and things like that? I mean, do you have any advice in that regard for our mostly amateur audience here?
The first superstar in tennis was Bill Tilden in 20s, and he wrote a book 1926 called Match Play and the Spin of the Ball. And it's an absolute classic. And in that book, Bill Tilden wrote one paragraph, and it says that the purpose of this game is to use your strength against your opponent's weaknesses under the pressure when the points are big. And that was 100 years ago. and it is totally 100% true still to this day. So, you have to understand that, what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths, and then, use it against your opponent. We used to tell, or we tell our players that in the middle of the first set, when you already have hopefully played 2 to 4 games, you have to be able to answer 6 questions. And those questions are, number 1, how you are winning the points. Number 2, how you are losing the points. How your opponent is winning the points, how your opponent is losing the points, and then what your opponent likes to do and what your opponent doesn't like to do. Those are the 3 questions. They sound simple, but it's not. And you have to have an answer to those ones, because when the points start to get bigger, you want to use your strength against your opponent's weakness, and you want to make your opponent, to deal with the pressure with something that they might not have a lot of confidence. So, simple terms, find out what is the weaker side, put pressure on that weaker side. If you can do it with your strength, that will be even better.
Got it. Thanks, Vesa. So besides watching, match footage of your opponent, how do you instruct your players to be perceptive about your their opponent's weaknesses? What are some methods that you like to use?
Like I said, if the player has been coached and taught well, and they are problem solvers, you know what, they can pick up these things already in the warm-ups, and in, like I said, in early couple of games, you will find out, what the opponent likes or don't like to do. I mean, the oldest trick in the book, if you don't know anything about your opponent, and this is the first time you are playing, in the warm-ups, drive the ball hard to the middle, and your opponent will always turn to the side that they like the most. So, if they turn to their backhand side, that gives you an early indication that, hey, backhand might be their favorite side. So just, paying attention, and then especially in the bigger points early in the match, check it out, what they like to do and what they don't like to do.
Got it. Thanks for that additional insight, Vesa. So, when I go into JTCC and I play my USTA League matches, I always see the banner that says "Trust your training." I'm sure you've explained this before, but what does that actually mean to you and your players?
Wow! Now you asked a question that is so loaded, and it's it will take about 3 weeks for me to explain it. But I give you a little background. In early days, we tried to create our philosophy, and we had these manuals and, hundreds of pages of our coaching philosophy and systems. And now when I look back, we did it to show everybody how much we think that we know. And I have learned over the years that, you simplify things, and that's when, you have a best chance to really understand it and use them. So I'm happy to say that our coaching philosophy is now 3 words. That is, trust your training. What it really means is that that the player has to have a certain confidence level that the work that he or she is doing is done mostly the right way, is helping her. Because we all know that in those big points, in serving for the match in the third set, it all comes to the, do you trust your skills? Do you trust your game? Do you trust your training? And so it's a really loaded question or loaded concept, and the mentoring comes into the place. The team with the coach, player, and the parents. That's super important. The key word here is the trust. The player has to trust the training. The coaches have to trust the player for their effort and commitment, and then the parents have to trust the good intentions and expertise of the coaches. So, as you can tell, it's a really loaded situation, and it's very difficult to navigate through. But when it works and when it's done right, that's when you win a lot of tough matches, because you trust what you have done, and that gives you a best chance to serve for the match when you are 6-5 in the Kalamazoo in the quarterfinals.
Thanks, Vesa. So, question on that. Like, let's say you're in that exact position in Kalamazoo, but let's say you haven't been able to train much. I'm kind of gearing it towards like maybe players who are just coming back after a break or something like that, and they're in a pressure situation. That at that point you can't maybe trust like the most recent training because maybe you haven't been training much or things like that. So what do you go to in those situations? Like, I guess what advice would you give players like who maybe, they haven't been training as much, but they still want to be able to play well in the tough situation, or is that just not really possible? Hopefully that question made some sense.
It can be done, but it takes us to the really important part of any kind of training or any kind of skills or any kind of sport, and that is how strong are your fundamentals. And so hopefully your fundamentals have been done well in the past. So, if you are a little sick or you have been injured or whatever, the fundamentals don't go away. And that's what I mean about trusting your training. If you have trained to have a solid fundamentals and you can trust that one. So even if you are, trusting and confidence, they don't always go in a hand in hand. So if you can trust in all the work that you have done over the years, even if you're a little bit low in the confidence at that moment, you learn to trust your fundamentals, and that gives you a fighting chance to hopefully to prevail. So I would urge every tennis player to work as much as you can to make your fundamental skills as solid as possible. And then, even if you have had some injuries or some breaks, trust your fundamentals, and that gives you a chance to be successful.
Thanks, Vesa. So this could be another loaded question for you, but very broad, I think. But what do you consider the fundamentals? If you were to say, hey, player X, like you need to work on the fundamentals, like what would you kind of expand then to describe that?
Gosh, you are asking some really loaded questions today. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Hope so.
So there are traditional fundamentals and then non-traditional fundamentals, and I think that every team has to kind of decide what those non-traditional fundamentals are. The easy answer for the traditional fundamentals is a solid technical skills, solid footwork patterns, and you know how to support your stroke with your feet and your movement. And then of course when it comes to playing the points, the solid fundamentals is that you have your 2 or 3 favorite patterns that you can run under the pressure. You have your routines, that can help you to handle the pressure. So we all know those ones, and it's a lot of work to get them right. But then there are those non-traditional fundamentals, which makes it really tricky. But that's that X factor. That is that creating the mindset, freedom to miss, creating the mindset of running every ball down. It's that commitment level to compete the right way, and all those things can also be taught over the long period of time. And they will make a huge difference. Understanding the value of consistent work, whatever it is, if you are working technical skills or footwork, but understanding that it's a lot of work and it's a consistent work that counts. So those are those intangibles that can be called a non-traditional fundamentals, but they are extremely, extremely important. And that's when that perspective comes to the play a little bit, that how do you tolerate the pressure and everything. So that's why coaching and teaching is so fascinating and so great, in a sense that you are dealing with these kind of things on daily basis, and it challenges not only the player, but it challenges the teacher and the coach. But strong fundamentals will give you a chance to be successful, whatever level your talent can take you, or whatever level you think that you are going to try to reach.
Thanks, Vesa. That's super helpful. And one of those fundamentals that you mentioned was routines to deal with pressure. And you, of course, have a pretty big sample size with all the players you've had at JTCC. So are there any commonalities in these routines that maybe you could share one or a few that maybe our audience could try for themselves?
We actually, we all see it on when we look at the best players in the world. It's all there in front of our eyes. Maybe I can help a little bit to explain what it really means. So we see the players, playing with their strings. They are not worried about if the strings are straight or not. They are actually doing that one because they are focusing their eyes. So, this is it's a trick to focus your eyes. So first you focus your eyes and then you can focus your mind. I mean, you never see a top player, playing with their strings and then looking around all the time. That would be funny.
Yeah.
But it's always the eyes are on the strings, and it's a technique to learn how to focus. And first body part that you have to focus is your eyes, so you can focus your mind. So that's an example of that one. The breathing is huge. I mean, that learning how to breathe and control your breathing. You look at the top players, they are masters of it. They do it so well. And that's one of the biggest things that I think that any level of player will right away improve their game when they learn how to breathe, because it calms your mind and it calms your nerves, and it just feels good when you do it. It sounds easy, but it's difficult to do, when your mind is racing and you are kind of under the pressure. So breathing is absolutely super important skill. No, and your goal is kind of create this. We have a term here at JTC. We try to achieve calm intensity under the pressure, and it's really loaded thing. You want to have this calm intensity. That means that you are thinking clearly. Hopefully, not a lot of things, but you are thinking clearly. You trust your skills, and then you are relaxed enough to have intensity, whatever is it, hitting the tennis ball or you're moving. So it's just sometimes it helps with the kids, that hey, you try to have a calm intensity on the court, and it's something that everybody can work on.
So yeah, Vesa, speaking of calm intensity, you may laugh at this story, but I was actually playing a mixed doubles match at JTCC a few days ago, and actually it was against Gabby, from your facility. So she's great player. So it was mixed doubles, and we were in the third set tiebreaker at 5-all, and I poached and hit a volley winner. And then I yelled very loud because it was kind of an intense, obviously close moment. Mm-hmm. And then after that point, our team didn't win another point. So we lost 10-6 in the third set. So I was curious. I'm wondering a selfish question. Is it bad to let out too much energy, like say if you hit a winner or you win a big point, like can that actually mess up your play by making you more nervous or too amped up or something like that?
That's a really, I think that happens to all of us, and it's really, that's a great question. To answer that one, if you overdo it, it can work you out internally. In a sense, you get either too excited or there's a too big of the release, and then then you don't have that balance of calm intensity. But one other thing that I really want, especially young tennis players, to consider, if you start to pump your fist against in front of somebody's face, and if somebody's a great competitor, you actually motivate them a lot. And I would tell the young players to be aware of, don't motivate your opponent at the big points. So I'm a big fan of showing positive energy, but don't overdo it, because it can mess up your internal balance in a sense with that calm intensity, but it can also absolutely motivate your opponent, and you don't want to have a super motivated opponent when the points are big. So you have to learn how to find the balance. But I do like it when the players show good positive energy, but you have to be aware because it can backfire.
Wow, thanks, Vesa. Yeah, good insights. I don't think that was the only thing that made us lose, but I did feel a little bit different after the big yell.
It can happen.
I'm sure the front desk probably heard me. But Vesa, a couple more questions for you. I'm curious. You obviously have learned so much about the game, and you've put your ego aside. So I'm curious about if you might have 3 books or resources that you would show a friend to help them improve their tennis game.
Okay. Right top of my, I think that I think that for somebody who really is a student of the game, check out Bill Tilden's Match Play and Spin Off the Ball. It's fascinating that it was written 100 years ago. And there are a lot of fundamentals that are still totally relevant nowadays. Then for the junior players, I'm a big fan of Brad Gilbert's Winning Ugly. I think that it's a really practical and simple book, and the power of it is it's so simple and common sense that we sometimes try to make things too complicated. And I think that Brad absolutely hit a home run with that book, and it's a great resource for any tournament player. And the third one is that this is a little different, but I would encourage. I hope that players have kept the player diary. And I hope that they have been written things down over the years. And you know what? Go back to those old diaries and check out things. It will make you appreciate all the work you have done. It will increase your trust in your training. And it shows that, hey, it can show you the right things and the wrong things that you have done. So of the 3 books that I think that will be interesting to read and check out, and it will help you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vesa. Those are great recommendations. And yeah, the player diary is something that I think players should give it a try, at least, a few weeks and see how it goes. Awesome. And I also would be remiss if I didn't educate the players, or at least have you educate them about JTCC just in general, what types of programs, because we've been talking about, you and the most elite athletes, JTCC and people, but I mean, obviously you have programs for all sorts of players. I met Jordan over there, who teaches a lot of adult players who are going to feed into our USTA league. So what type of programs do you have, and who can join them?
One of our big things, how we see ourselves at the moment, that, tennis for everybody. And so I'm glad to say and announce that we have programs for every level, every type of a player, and just please come and check us out and take a leap of faith and come a little bit out of your comfort zone. And by no means, we are not anymore just a place for high performance. Those, we are absolutely a place for everybody at the moment. And we just want to grow the game of tennis. It's like I said earlier, I think that it's the greatest game in the world to learn the life skills. And unfortunately, it's not doing great in the USA. Lately, it has been really picking up, which is a great news. But we need to really grow the pace of the game and the grassroots and get as many people on the tennis courts. And it will take everybody to try to talk about it, try to play, try to promote it, and so it's just a great game, and please everybody go and hit against the wall or find the program that you like to play, and just as long as you keep on swinging and hitting the balls, I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you have that passion to get more players in the game and to retain them. Kind of a somewhat related question. Do you is JTCC planning to make any pickleball courts? Because I know that's like a big thing. Pickleball is taking the courts, or they're putting lines, and is that something that you have discussed at all over there?
First of all, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, I hate that stuff. It's taking tennis players to play something else. But you have to take your hat off. I think that the pickleball people who are running it are doing a great job promoting it. and doing
Yeah.
it. So yeah, we are thinking about it. We are going to have some events here, actually, pickleball events, and see how it goes. But my first priority is that I would love to have more and more people playing tennis. But as long as they are moving and there's some kind of racket in your hand and you hit a moving object, I'm happy. So I'm much more tolerant than I was a few years ago, and I have to say that they have done a great job promoting the game. So to answer your question, we will have some events, pickleball events happening here, and we will be seeing if we do something more than that. But it's in the talks.
Gotcha. Thanks, Vesa. Yeah, I have the same trajectory as you as far as the initial reaction and
Yeah.
Gradual. Yeah. So
Yeah,
and also
I
Vesa.
think that
Yeah.
I just think
Go
that
ahead.
I've
Sorry.
just been jealous how good job they have done with promoting the game, and I think that we have a lot to
Yeah.
learn, and hopefully we learn from them because it's taking off big time.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. What is the best place for everybody to go to learn more about JTCC or you or what's the best place that they can check out?
I think that nowadays everybody is checking out the website, so
Okay.
just jtcc.org. Hopefully it's informative, and you can get some basic information, and then just to come by and come to see the place, and hopefully you feel the environment, that the spirit of the place is something that you like, and go from there. But the website is always the best way to check it out.
Very nice, Vesa. And I have to ask you this just for fun. Do you remember giving me a private lesson? Maybe like 20 years ago? No, how old am I? So, yeah, maybe 20 some years ago.
You know what? I vaguely remember, because the first time when we talked with the last podcast, you made a mention that it was super hard and super demanding, and I do have some mental picture of somebody just struggling through it and trying to figure it out how to survive. So I do
Yeah.
have I vaguely remember that.
Very
So,
good. Very good.
yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you learned something. So.
I did. I learned a lot, actually. I just remember you're saying feet always moving, and I think I only got one water break. But it was very good. Very good. So,
okay.
Yeah. Awesome. So, Vesa, thank you so much. I just want to give you the floor if there's anything else that you want to mention we didn't want to talk about, or just any closing remarks that you'd like to make.
Again, I just encourage everybody to, leave the phones for the second and go and be active, go and hit some tennis balls. I mean, what is better than, hitting tennis balls with your friends or some other people, or, making connections, making human connections. I think that that's something that we need to do. And the times we are facing right now with the pandemic, I think that we all know tennis is one of the very best sports to social distancing. And so don't be afraid to, go to your closest club or the public courts and please keep on hitting tennis balls. That's all I care, is that, we get more players to play this great game.
Love that, Vesa. Thank you so much for that message, and 100% on board there. As you said, the greatest sport for life lessons, and yeah, it's amazing. Like if I play a match and I win, I feel great, and there's things to learn. Even if I lose, I get more motivated about what I can improve. And yeah, there's so many aspects to the game: mental, physical, yeah, just everything. So get out there and play. And Vesa, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Really appreciate your time. I know you're very, very busy. So thanks again, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you are doing, growing the game.
Thank you, Vesa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. I really hope that you enjoyed my interview with Coach Vesa Ponkka. And Vesa, thanks a lot for your time, and hope to get on the court with you and work on my serve and other parts of my game soon. And you can get any of the links that I mentioned during the show on the show notes page which is in your podcast app of choice, as well as at tennisfiles.com/226. So that should be up, by the date of this episode, or at the most, it might be on Thursday. All right. And you know what? I forgot to mention my pun of the day, I guess, of the episode. Lately, I've been doing them just because I enjoy puns. So here goes this one. And this is very good to hear if it's before Thanksgiving. So the pun is, how do tennis players like their apple pie on Thanksgiving? Slice served. You may think I'm grasping at straws, but I think for some of you, you'll really appreciate that. And I do hope that you enjoy your apple pie if you eat that and whatever else you eat. So enjoy the holidays, and I wish you a great time with your families and your friends. And also, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast, and you can do that on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice that you use to listen to this show. And last but not least, I would like to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of the show. And this one is actually by unknown. I'm sure someone said it, but I couldn't track down the author. But the quote is, "A wet person does not fear the rain." Really like that. A lot of times, we have all these fears, but once we actually give it a try, it's really not so bad. So that's a good one. Good one to bring up, that quote. So appreciate that, whoever wrote that. All right. Well, again, happy holidays. Have a great Thanksgiving. And I will see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is Mirabana Ranchad signing out.